This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, I'm Talia.
And I'm Tanya.
And together we are Crimes and Consequences, a true crime podcast. Hi, Tanya.
Hi, Talia.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Crimes and Consequences. This is a story, Tanya, I've never heard before, and it's pretty brutal, the actual crime, and very interesting. So before I start, though, I'd like to ask everybody to hit the subscribe, follow, like button. And with that, are you ready?
I am.
This is a story of Charles and Elizabeth Sennett. They were living in 1983 in Sheffield, Alabama, and they had a really good life. Just to give you a little background, Charles was a pastor. He worked at the Westside Church of Christ. Sheffield was a very tight community, and they were very well respected. Liz was a really good mom to their two children. They had two children, Chuck and Mike. He's really Charles Jr. Elizabeth and Charles met when they were in their teens. And just to give you a little background, they met in Ohio, both very Christian. They fell in love. They got married at the age of 20.
Oh.
And they eventually moved from Ohio to Alabama. Charles had went to school to become a pastor. And he actually found a congregation he could work at. And it happened to be in Alabama, where at that time, Elizabeth's parents, and she went by Liz, so I'm going to call her Liz, they lived. So it was very exciting for them. 9 months after the date they were married, which was in 1962, they got married. That's when Charles Jr., Chuck, was born. 9 months.
A honeymoon baby.
Mm-hmm. And then Mike was born 2 years later. They had a really good relationship. Liz was a devoted mom by all sentiments. Everybody described her as just being, she's kind of quiet, loving, the person you would want to hang out with in the sense that you could trust her. She was caring. She would always be there for anybody in the community. And then Charles, being pastor, was obviously well respected in the community. And they had a great life. They did everything together. They would play games. I mean, they were a tight family that was very, I don't want to say overly religious, but very Christian, and that was a bond they had. And everybody knew Sundays they would go to Westside Church of Christ, and Charles would preach. But then something happened.
Uh-oh.
Something very bad. It was approximately 11:44 a.m. on Friday, March 18th, 1988, when Charles called the Colbert County Sheriff's Office hysterical. He found his wife, Liz, lying unconscious and bleeding profusely on the floor of their living room. He had been gone from 9 until almost noon, and when he came home, there was his wife, and it was not a nice scene, but I'll get to that. The house had been ransacked, especially the master bedroom. There appeared to be a very big struggle in there. And when the police arrived, they could tell that Liz had fought hard for her life. When they looked at her body, she had multiple stab wounds to her upper right chest and neck and slashes across her head, but she was still alive.
Oh, man.
She was beaten very badly, which, again, I'll go into, but I'm warning you guys, she was beaten very badly. But when the EMS arrived, they discovered she still had a heartbeat. Wow. And when Charles found out, he almost passed out.
Oh, no.
He was
relieved.
EMS put Liz in the ambulance, and they took her to Helen Keller Memorial Hospital and immediately, without delay, put her in surgery. They were trying to stop the hemorrhaging because she was just bleeding profusely. However, 2 hours later, she died.
Wow.
Investigators obviously began to talk to neighbors, friends, family, and Charles was completely distraught. The neighbors had reported seeing a car with Oklahoma license plates leaving the rural residence, and they lived in a very rural house. So Liz is at home and she's by herself, and there's nobody nearby. I mean, there's neighbors, but it's rural.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of land between her and her neighbors. And
Yeah.
yeah.
One person, one of the neighbors, stated that he thought there were two men and a dog in the car. Police immediately launched a search, be on the lookout for any vehicle with an Oklahoma license plate. They were hoping to, figure out who, they're in Alabama, so you got an Oklahoma license plate. Who did this? And that license plate would stand out, right?
Right.
They went for days with no leads. They interviewed Charles twice, and they really had no idea who would have done this to Liz. But there were some things that just stood out to them that seemed really strange. For example, the whole house wasn't ransacked.
It was just the bedroom?
It was the bedroom and a little bit of the living room.
Okay.
There were only two things taken, and I'll get to that. There was still money left in Liz's purse.
Really?
Hundreds of dollars she had in her purse. So that's
seems
really
weird. Yeah.
really weird. There was no signs of any sexual assault or an attempt on a sexual assault on Liz. So they couldn't figure out a clear motive. If it's not
robbery
and
or
then sexual assault,
yeah.
why is somebody out in this rural area attacking a 45-year-old mom?
Yeah, and so brutally.
Who has no enemies, by the
Right.
way. Liz had no enemies. As you can imagine, the community was completely beside themselves. Charles, he was beside himself, and then their poor children
Oh, yeah.
were devastated. Everybody was devastated. Police held a press conference, and during the press conference, they basically stated that they had no idea still what was going on, and they were desperate for clues, and they had a tip line asking people to call in for tips.
That is desperation. We've done many stories where they need the public's help and just providing any clues.
And another thing they noticed was there was no sign of forced entry. So you would think that Liz might have known these people because it appears she opened the door for them. As I stated, the police first talked to Charles, obviously. I mean, he's distraught. But he had an alibi. He had left their family home at about 7:30 a.m. and he went and did a bunch of errands, including visiting his church and then several local residents. And as I said, he got home about 11:43, something like that. And then he called at 11:44. And police were able to corroborate his alibi. So he definitely wasn't there. An autopsy was conducted on Liz, and it determined that she died somewhere between 10:30 and 11:30. So they had that narrow window of time in which she was attacked. Again, that's how they know that Charles, he wasn't there. It was only 4 days after the murder when investigators decided to drain a pond that was located near the Sennett residence. And when they did, they found some interesting things, which they believed were the murder weapons.
Oh.
They found a piece of wood floating amidst the murky waters. They found a hunting knife, a fire poker, and a broken wooden walking cane. This pond was only 50 yards from the Sennett's home. And police were like, these have to be the murder weapons because she was beaten.
Yeah.
The autopsy showed that she was beaten all over the head, the face. She was almost unrecognizable, and then stabbed repeatedly. Another interesting thing that kind of confused the police is I told you that there was no break-ins, no sign of a break-in. There were two things that were taken. It was a video recorder, a VCR.
Okay.
A VCR, but not the remote. Just the VCR.
The remote, yeah.
And a stereo. But again, all this money was left
But you're going to leave cash, right?
Cash in the purse. And the police were like, this is not making any sense. And then whoever came in just went 50 yards away and dumped the murder weapons.
Like, I'm sure she had jewelry on that was probably more
She
valuable.
She did have jewelry too.
Like a wedding ring.
On March 25th, so this is a week later, the sheriff and the district attorney held another news conference, and they issued an award. They authorized the sum of $10,000, which is the equivalent of $25,430.26, for any information relating to the case. They did get a tip, and it's pretty interesting.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
Someone from the church congregation
Really?
reached out to them. The police don't know how, but this person, and I believe it's a female, came across a Valentine's Day card in Charles' desk.
Oh, and it was not from Liz.
It was not from Liz.
Oh, shit.
It was from another member of the congregation.
Oh, man.
And it was very telling in the card. It described a sexual relationship. I don't know exactly what the card said, but it led police to believe Charles was definitely having an affair. And this woman he was having an affair with was not only a member of the congregation, but also a friend of the Sennett family.
Oh, damn.
I know.
The plot thickens.
Just when you think there's some good guys out there.
I know,
there,
right? Man, a pastor, lovely wife.
This obviously made them really want to talk to Charles. And they'd already talked to him twice. But this time, it was different. They were going to put the pressure on him. Again, this is about a week later. Charles came in for more extensive questioning. They didn't publicly name him as a suspect, but they were convinced he knew more than he knew. But again,
he had an alibi.
When they met with Charles, they told him, "We know about the affair.
Oh.
And we believe that you were involved in the killing of your wife." Charles was pretty shaken.
Yeah. Guess what? The jig is up.
Yeah, because they spoke to the woman that gave him the card.
Oh, shit.
She came in, she admitted to the affair, and she admitted to giving Charles $3,000 because Charles had a lot of debt.
Oh, fuck. Okay, number one, never give money to your married boyfriend.
And think about it. If $10,000 is $25,000 now, she gave him $3,000.
Yeah, that's like
a little more than a third.
Yeah, like $9,000, $8,000
to pay off debts.
Today. Yeah, to pay off debts.
And interestingly, Charles took out a life insurance policy a few months before Liz's death.
Of course he did.
He was in a great deal of debt.
For what?
That is something we don't really know. We don't know. But something you should know about Charles is for a few years, he was unable to work as a pastor. He was a pastor, and he also sold burial vaults.
Oh, okay.
So he had 2 jobs, and he was really stressed out, and he became extremely depressed. He had to see a psychiatrist, and he even reached out to a neurosurgeon in desperation because he was taking medications. He was taking lithium.
Oh, damn.
He did seem to get better, but he still had these ups and downs with his moods. But through time, he got better. He wasn't a pastor for about 2 years. Then he started working again as a pastor. And I know he was selling those burial vaults, but I don't know if he continued to do that full time. So that's how the family had some money.
Yeah.
But when Charles was depressed and he couldn't work as a pastor, that's when Liz stepped up to the plate. And she began working as a secretary.
Oh, okay.
But she only worked part-time, and then she was still a full-time mom trying to help Charles get through those rough times. So that's a little background on Charles.
Yeah, I can see them going into debt when he's not working full-time and she's not working full-time, and it adds up.
Eventually, the woman that wrote the Valentine's Day letter, or gave him the card, lawyered up. She's done.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Again, Charles was, I told you, interrogated and freaked out. The police told him all of, everything they knew. And Charles left the police station and he went to his family's house where Chuck and Mike were. And he talked to them. And you know what he told them?
What?
He told them that he was involved in the death of their mother.
Oh, that's terrible.
And that he'd had an extramarital affair.
Oh, man.
He confessed to them.
Wow.
And obviously, they were very upset.
Yes.
And Charles was very upset. I can't even imagine the fucking tension.
Right? I can't imagine telling your kids this.
this. I was involved in the death of your mother, and I cheated on her, and I'm a pastor.
Yeah. And they've got to be, 25, 23, 22-ish, because they were married.
No, I think they're in their teens.
Really?
I think they're like 19 and 17.
Okay.
And I believe he was with his family, too.
Oh, damn.
So everybody's freaking out. Everybody's yelling and crying. And Charles steps outside, and he's visibly upset. He goes to his pickup truck parked outside. And then within moments,
oh no,
a deafening boom shattered the stillness.
I knew it.
The family rushed out, and they found that Charles, he was slumped over in the cab of his truck, and he had a gunshot wound to his chest, but he wasn't dead.
Oh, shit.
So EMS comes, and they had called the police too, and one of the detectives, I think his name was Ron May, I could be wrong, went into the truck, the EMS vehicle. Charles was still alive, and this detective was hoping that he might be able to answer questions, though I believe he was unconscious. He's still hoping he might wake up for a second, but he didn't. In his pocket, there was a note, and the note basically confessed that I was involved. I'm so sorry for what I did to my kids. I'm sorry for what I did to my wife and to this community. He felt deep remorse and pain, and he said he never really intended to hurt her, but he became entangled with some unsavory individuals.
Okay.
And he said that the reason he killed himself was to save his family from any further shame and embarrassment. Charles died in the emergency room, the same place his wife had died.
Damn.
Well, she died at the same hospital, the Helen Keller Hospital, 1 week later at 6:40 p.m.
God, his poor kids.
I know.
To lose their mom and then find out, okay, your dad was involved, and then he kills himself. Oh, man.
And they saw him shot in the truck.
Oh, these poor kids.
Poor kids. Then an anonymous tipster called into Crime Stoppers, and this female knew all the details, down to the T, of everything that took place. She even knew the serial number of the VCR, and that there was no remote.
The remote was
the remote was missing.
Stolen,
Yes. She called Crime Stoppers. She eventually talked to the police, and she did get the reward money because she was pretty adamant about.
She got the reward money.
Well, she did help them solve.
She did.
The crime.
Was it the girlfriend? We'll never know.
Well, we don't know because it's anonymous.
Yeah, gee, I wonder who it was.
This is what is believed to have happened. Charles apparently approached a man named Billy Williams. He was 22 years old. He was a tenant renting an apartment from the Sennetts. They owned some property, and it was early March of 1988. During that, when he approached Billy, he kind of had I would like to say, feeler questions for Billy, because Billy was a bit of a shady character.
Okay.
Basically, he tried to figure out if Billy would be willing to kill for $3,000.
The magic $3,000?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And Billy was like, I got to think about this. And then he reached out to two of his friends, Kenny Smith and John Forrest Parker. And he offered them each $1,000 if they would kill Liz. And by the way, Billy didn't plan on killing her. He was going to be the middleman.
Oh, okay.
He's going to keep $1,000
for doing nothing.
And they're going to go and they're going to kill Liz.
Damn.
All with the money that Charles had gotten from his mistress. On the day that Liz died, Kenny and John, they showed up at her house. They knocked on the door and they told her, your husband said we could check out your property for hunting purposes. And she thought, okay, this is weird. This has never happened before. So she calls Charles on the phone and asks him, I think he was at the church, did you agree for these two guys to check out our property? And Charles says, yes, I did. So they walk through the house and Liz takes him out to the back and they look at the property. Why they didn't kill her right then and there, we don't know. But eventually they came back inside and they started talking to Liz. And then they started out in the kitchen, okay? And then from behind, John Parker started just punching her. He was hitting her, and then he took a wooden walking cane, and I don't know whose wooden walking cane it was, and he took a fire poker, and both of the men, Kenny and John, just started beating her.
Oh, damn.
And she begged for her life. After beating her, and she was still alive, that's when John took the hunting knife and just stabbed her, and then cut her throat.
Oh, terrible.
So the wooden cane, part of it had broken from beating her. So there was a piece found by Liz's body, and the rest was in the pond. The police had also found some hair next to Liz, and even though there was no DNA at the time, like testing for DNA, they knew it wasn't Liz's, and they knew it wasn't Charles. They knew it was somebody else. Originally, John Parker was given some money to go get a gun, to kill Liz with a gun.
Yeah, that would have been much neater.
But he was on drugs.
Oh, shit. Never give money to a drug addict.
Yeah, it was $100. And he was on drugs. So he used that money for drugs and then grabbed the hunting knife to kill her that way.
Was it his, or did they have it?
It was his.
Yeah.
Given the tipster's information, Billy Williams, he was arrested. And so was John Parker and Kenny. And they all went to trial. Billy Williams, of course, he wasn't there for the murder.
Right.
He just took $1,000 and set it up. He alleged that he didn't do it. He didn't have anything to do with it, blah, blah, blah. And he argued that, this is kind of interesting, he argued that even if he was involved in this conspiracy to commit murder, it wasn't the two other guys. It wasn't John and Kenny that killed Liz.
Oh.
Charles came back.
Oh, is that what he's saying?
And stabbed Liz, realizing she was alive.
Oh, so they just beat her. And when Charles came home,
yes,
he's saying that he stabbed Liz.
But then how would all of the evidence be in the same pond?
Right,
That
that's
Charles
true.
just knew where to go and throw it away?
Yeah.
I don't think so. They didn't have cell phones. Billy Williams was only 21 years old when he was found guilty of capital murder.
Oof.
And it took him 3 hours. He was sentenced to life in prison, so without parole. He died of natural causes in 2022.
That's a shame.
Sorry, 2020.
2020.
Then John Forrest Parker, he went to trial. His defense mounted a vigorous argument during his trial. They said that John and Kenny were not hired by Charles to carry out a murder, but rather to injure Liz. And again, Charles is the one that did the final act.
Man, they're hanging their hat on that. Come on now.
Really, you're beating her. And
you paid me $1,000 to injure someone?
And her face, it was extremely brutal. In fact, there was an argument that the autopsy photos shouldn't even have been shown in court because they had too much of an emotional impact on the jury.
Oh, man. That's bad.
Really fucked up.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long for the jurors to decide John Parker did it. And they only deliberated for 1 hour. 1 fucking hour, Tanya.
Man. They were like, he did it.
The jury came back with a recommendation of life in prison without parole. But the judge, no, he didn't really like that. And he decided to give him death.
Damn.
Right? Holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit.
John did everything he could to appeal. But on June 10th, 2010, he faced the executioner.
Oof.
Mike and Chuck Sennett, the Liz and Charles's son,
Children, yeah.
They were there at the execution.
Oh.
On the day of the execution, John spent much of his time reading the Bible. And for his last meal, because we always like to know what their last meals are, right?
I'm always fascinated. I don't know why.
He had fried fish.
Oh, I would not pick that.
French fries and sweet tea.
I would not pick that as a last meal.
No, I would have nachos. Lots of nachos.
Yeah, lots of cheese.
Lots of chocolate. Sour cream this time. I usually don't get it.
Extra cheese.
And guacamole.
And lots of chocolate.
And then lobster.
Oh, lobster.
Something expensive.
Yeah, right?
Sorry, Tanya and I go on these food porn things. Sorry. Just thinking of food now.
I just would be like, just whip me up like a bunch of chocolate, maybe some cheesecake. I would eat so much garbage I'd throw up, I think. Right?
So Charles was 42 years old. And at 6:41 p.m., He was pronounced dead.
Lethal injection, huh?
Lethal injection.
Damn.
Yep. Next came Kenny Smith. He had a murder trial in Birmingham, Alabama on October 30th, 1989. He was the last one to be tried.
I'd be shitting bricks because look what happened to the other two, right?
He tried to implicate Billy and John and Charles, not him. But if you're the attorney, I'm like, this hasn't worked before.
Right.
So we might want to take a plea.
Yeah. But no. Man, that's a tough one as an attorney.
Again, he said that John and him just beat her.
Sure.
And Charles killed her. And he did argue that when he left, she was alive, which is true.
That is true.
However, that doesn't mean they didn't do what.
It's not the proximate cause.
Right. Thank you for your
welcome.
attorney stuff.
Thank
your attorney information. What's the word I'm looking for? Spew.
Yeah, am I spewing the legal terminology? Yeah. The proximate cause of her death was what they did to her.
So guess how long the jury deliberated for?
Was it less than an hour?
20 minutes.
Man.
20 minutes.
They didn't even order lunch.
Nope. They wanted to get out.
They were like, let's get the fuck out.
They agreed 10-2 in a vote for death.
They weren't even going to let the judge make that decision.
It took 75 minutes for them to determine if he should die or not.
Well, took a little extra time, right?
Well, you want to go over that carefully.
Yeah, you do.
He appealed the sentence, and it did get overturned.
It did?
Mm-hmm. So there was a second trial, and they introduced evidence, the prosecutor did, including the fact he did confess. He confessed to investigators, and they found the stolen VCR in his home.
What a dumb fuck. Dude, really?
But his appeal didn't work.
I'm guessing not.
And he was sentenced
to death
for a second time. He filed one last appeal saying, the death penalty is cruel.
It's unconstitutional.
Yeah, exactly. And he pointed out 2 previous executions. So just so you know, this is very recent. This is in 2022. That the state of Alabama had fucked up.
Yeah.
There was Joe Nathan James Jr., and he had a 3-hour delay because of they couldn't get a line in him, and they claimed, this is like torture for somebody to be strapped down.
Yeah.
Waiting to die. On Tuesday, November 15th, 2022, just 2 days before his execution was to happen, the U.S. Supreme Court denied his request to stop it. He was scheduled for November 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m., but there was a dramatic turn of events, and it was called off just before midnight.
Oh, God. I'm like on the edge of my seat, girl. This is crazy.
So you have to listen to this. They had until midnight to execute him. That's the date of execution.
Oh, okay.
And they couldn't get a vein.
Oh, okay, yes, because he was waiting and they were trying to find it.
It happened to another person that I was describing before, Joe Nathan James Jr.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And they tried to find a large enough vein, and they couldn't. They dedicated over an hour to get 2 veins to get the injection in, and they couldn't. So they had to stop the execution because it was midnight.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Technicalities.
So he returned back to his cell in death row.
I would be dying. I'd be shitting a brick. At that point, just fucking kill me.
So there were a lot more legal things I'm not going to go into and bore everybody with. But he was given a new execution date of January 25th, 2024. And this time the state of Alabama opted to use death by nitrogen hypoxia instead of lethal injection.
Is that suffocating?
I'll tell you. And there were concerns that he was the guinea pig for this because it was the first time a death row inmate in the United States was going to undergo execution by this method.
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
And that is basically where they have him breathe in nitrogen and he loses oxygen. And
so kind of suffocating sort of.
Yeah.
Damn. Nitrogen gas.
Gas. But I like nitrogen when I go to the dentist. That's, yeah.
Is that nitrogen? I hate that stuff.
I love that stuff.
Oh, I can't deal with it. Are you kidding me?
While he was breathing it in, he tried to hold his breath as long as possible.
Okay.
But, that's
what's the
futile.
Point?
There's no point.
Right, there's no point.
And he was struggling against his restraints. There were some involuntary movements in what looked like agonizing breathing. But this is expected when you're restrained and you're
Yeah.
losing oxygen. According to one witness, he was a spiritual advisor named Jeff Hood. He described the execution as the most horrible thing he'd ever seen.
Oh, no.
He stated that Kenny wore a mask through which the nitrogen was administered, and he had intense convulsions when the gas was turned on, and he popped up on the gurney, but he was restrained, so I guess he popped up as much as he could,
right,
gasping. I don't know. That's his vivid account of how it happened. And again, the Sennett's children, Chuck and Mike, they were there. They stated that it seemed like a lot of focus today was on Kenny and his nitrogen, whatever process. And it kind of upset us a little bit. What's going on is overshadowed what actually happened.
It's true. I was just thinking that. So that was just this January.
Yes. And Charles and Liz are buried together.
They are.
Mm-hmm. In a dual plot in the cemetery.
I don't know if I'd want to be buried next to my husband who had me killed.
I know, but it's not really her choice.
Yeah, I know.
She died, and that's really sad. And her family.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure they reflected on this. And
and he was remorseful, I guess.
To the point he didn't want to live.
Yeah, well, he just didn't want to go to prison. I'm sorry, I'm cynical.
She's so cynical.
Damn, I'm sorry.
We don't know that's true. But
I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
But he did plot for months.
Oh,
I mean, think about it.
Dude,
he took out life insurance policy, got money from his mistress.
Continued an affair.
Met weeks prior to the murder.
That's true.
With these guys, or at least Billy, and set it all up.
Yeah.
And even when his wife called and asked, is it true you are allowing these men on our property to hunt?
Yes.
He said yes.
Yeah, you're right.
And why would he just want to injure
I know,
his
that
wife?
makes no sense.
Why are they arguing that as
bullshit.
a fucking defense?
Yeah, that was
because
bullshit.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I agree.
So that is the story of the
terrible.
sad tale of what happened to Elizabeth Sennett, Liz Sennett.
Poor Liz. That's terrible. She didn't deserve that.
No, she was described as an amazing
she
human
sounds
being.
it. I feel so bad for her children. I feel bad for her family.
I know.
I feel bad for his family too, frankly. And this is a terrible thing. I'm sure his family was distraught as well. So.
And she had a grandbaby.
Oh.
And she just loved that grandbaby.
Oh, man. I hate people, dude.
She had more than one. She had grandchildren.
Do you know if the mistress was married?
I don't know that.
Oh, I wish I knew.
That's the question you have for me.
Well, I wondered, what was the point? So he's just killing her to pay off the bills? Or is he killing her to pay off the bills?
He had a lot of debt.
Yeah, he pay off the bills and run away with his mistress. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what the motive is here. I know money is one of them.
This, to me, is the most craziest part, is that there were never any problems in their marriage. They didn't fight on the outside. They seemed perfect. They spent a lot of time together.
That just goes to show you never know who you're married to, right?
Right. Or who your podcast co-host is.
You never know. I could come and murder you. You never know, Talia.
Well, you know what, Tanya? We haven't done in a long time. I am ashamed of us.
I am ashamed of us as well.
We have shout outs.
Yes.
And these are to our very special Patreon members. And if you don't know what Patreon is, you probably only started listening to us. But you can go to patreon.com/TNT Crimes. And if you go there, you can get the once a week episodes we release exclusively for our Patreon members. They're ad-free and they're much more raw. Mm-hmm. A lot of more swearing. Mm-hmm. So if you like that, you'll really like this.
Yeah.
And usually more gruesome than the ones we put out in the public. But you also get the public episodes ad-free and early release. We release them on Fridays instead of Mondays. And we have a website, crimesandconsequences.com, you can go to. And if you're a podcast, if you listen on Apple, you can join us with Apple Podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Subscribe.
You can subscribe through there, and it's the same episodes you find on Patreon.
Yeah, the only problem with that is we don't get access to your name.
Yeah. So we can't give you a shout out.
give you a shout out. And that's unfortunate. But we can give these people a shout out. And we have so many that we are going to do half this week and half next. So if you don't hear your name, we will next week.
Sounds good.
Shout out to, I think it's Rocio, Rocio, Ross, Crystal, Joe, Alicia, Chelsea, Molly, Katie Cakes, Chelsea H, Ross, Christy, Emma, Jody, Game Changer.
Game Changer.
Thank you, Game Changer. Brittany Ash, Josie, Brenda, Truck, Truc, TRUC.
Okay.
Thank you. Melissa, Carrie, Ave, Avi,
Could be Avi, Ava.
Ave, whoever you are. Thank you. Susan, Katie, Jamie, Kayla, Corey, Lauren, Tabitha H, Jackie G, Nikki H, Susan H, Cindy H, Carissa B, Cami, Yari, TV.
I've seen that one in the Patreon.
Selena S, Shannon W, Chastity M, Hannah K, Natalie B, Lucy N, Leanne G, Wendy W, Casey, Madison R, La Gesta. I'm sorry, but you know who you are, and we thank you. Heather, Maddie, Eduardo, Janine. I guess I'm going through them all. Kelly P, Amaya S, Ronald L, Sabrina, Nikki P, Lindy R, Lisa M, Shannon R, and Stephanie R.
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for waiting months possibly to get that.
For all of this. We really appreciate you guys more than you know.
Woo-woo.
And we appreciate your support. It's been a little bit of a rough year for us, but we're getting back on track. And we appreciate everybody that's taken the time to stick with us.
Yeah, to stick with us. We do appreciate you. So thank you to our new members. And until our next episode.
Don't kill each other.
Bye.
Bye.